Thank you, everybody, for joining this session. I will share my screen in just one moment. Okay. So welcome to this session today about SIM swap at a glance. I am Prabha Jha. I'm a senior manager at Verizon Wireless and specialize in the area of risk and compliance. Although I come from cybersecurity career and the background across my career of about 18 years now. So thank you for joining the session. In this 30 minutes, I would really like to just take you through a quick journey of this hot topic currently, which affects many lives today, since mobility and mobile technology really has become an essential component of our lives, more so in the COVID world than ever before. So as Angela pointed out, please feel free to post questions in the VHA application, and I would try to answer as much as possible. And I would try to save at least 5 minutes at the end of the session to answer some of those questions and answer them with time. So with that, and being cognizant of time, let's dive right in. So SIM, I have a picture there of what the SIM card usually looks like. And SIM swapping basically is one of the low-tech and devastating problem today when it comes to security and identity theft and a whole lot of things. So we will talk about those in a little bit, and you will be getting an overview of what SIM swapping is, how is it done, and also how to protect yourself. But we'll not leave you at that, but I will also talk about, based on some of the public information available out there, on how the industry giants are working every day to make it harder for the fraudster to conduct these SIM swaps. So let's do it. SIM swapping is a feature which allows the seamless porting of the telephone number to a device containing a different subscriber identity module or SIM. So this feature is normally used in a best case scenario where a customer has either lost their phone or had their phone stolen, or they're switching service to a new phone, or just because, I mean, a lot of times this is also, we swap our SIM cards if we are traveling and we don't have an unlocked device. You take your SIM card and stick it into another phone so that it works in a different location, different country, and so on. So, but when it comes to SIM swapping as an attack, it's a low-tech, devastating attack, also sometimes known and mixed up with port-out scams, SIM splitting, SIM jacking. You hear all these words in news and all across the board for SIM swapping. And ultimately, this is a type of account takeover by fraudsters. And most of the time, these fraudsters are targeting a weakness in the two-factor authentication and the two-step verification. Sometimes we also call it a step-up verification, or any way of customer authenticating themselves with a second factor, multiple factor, and fraudster is exploiting that weakness in some of those flows to swap your SIM to an unauthorized device in an unauthorized manner. One example of two-factor is, we all are pretty much familiar with that, is receiving that text message on your device, and or you place a call to a mobile telephone to validate that, yes, it is me. It's an opportunity to allow customer or the consumer to engage and validate themselves with another factor. Usually SIM swapping compromises in the gaps exist across those areas. So this is kind of a quick flow looking like what it looks like, how it works. So the fraudster steals the bank's, for example, in here, I am presenting a picture of how an active SIM swap fraud might happen. So, and I have the credits for some of these diagrams that I have taken from some of the industry experts and the knowledge area as we share their knowledge with this group here. So the fraudster steals the bank's customer credential and mobile number. Then the fraudster manipulates the mobile operator to perform a SIM swap of the customer's mobile number. Then they use that credential to initiate a login to their online banking account. And the bank sends that SMS or OTP on customer's mobile number. So to get to step 4, a fraudster starts at step 1 with some piece of information, but since the bank account is requiring a 2-factor authentication, the SIM swapping really enables them to exploit that vulnerability. And as the SIM swap completes, now the fraudster can validate the SMS OTP and the number. The OTP arrives on fraudster's mobile device, and then it is used to access the customer's account. So from the very beginning, the scam usually begins with the fraudster gathering personal detail about the target. And that can come from various entry points, like it could be a phishing email, or there could be data bought from an organized criminal. There could be social engineering the victim. Actually, although it is number 3 on my list, this is something we have seen pretty often. Also, bribing or tricking an employee at a phone store. And in some countries, notably India and Nigeria, the fraudsters have also had success with convincing the victim to approve the SIM swap by pressing 1. Like, hey, I mean, when you get the OTP and it goes, oh, notification from carrier saying, press 1 if you want to swap your SIM card, and you get a call at the same time with, oh, I am just trying to finish a transaction that you started off somewhere else, and please press 1. And it kind of, the fraudster plays that, convincing the victim to approve the SIM swap and complete that. And once they are in control of the stolen phone number, the fraudster usually go ahead with resetting the password of any online account that allows password reset or 2-factor verification through a text message or an automated phone call, which is, if you think about it, is the most online services today, be it our bank accounts, social media accounts, and so on, and also the mobile carrier websites, which basically transfer the control over. And from then on, the scammers can just continue and pivot in a variety of directions. I have taken some example here of some recent activities, and actually I stopped at the end of 2019. We have seen few new ones coming up in the news you might be familiar with, but I tried to go back, way back as far as possible to see the first SIM swap incident. And July 2018 case of 20-year-old Joel Ortiz from Boston, who was apprehended as a suspect of stealing millions of dollars in crypto coin with the help of a SIM swap. Right next month, another incident where a fraudulent SIM swap on high-value target was arrested in Florida. Right next month, React Task Force then spearheaded, and they ended an investigation in Missouri where there was a group conducting SIM swap and successfully stole 14 million from cryptocurrency. So the one trend you see is definitely SIM swap kind of picked up in the mid 2018, and most of them going in for cryptocurrencies type of fraud. In August 2019, another the entrepreneur and virtual currency investigator had a lawsuit for AT&T because 224 millions were lost and 24 million worth of cryptocurrency after a fraudulent execution of SIM swap on his mobile phone account and with AT&T. And most of you are familiar, very likely have heard where in August 2019, also Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey's account was compromised by Chuckle Squad, followed up with Access Grace Mortis Twitter account hacked in another SIM swap by the same group, Chuckle Squad. And they were previously, the same group had Twitter CEO account and other social media stars. So the idea with this slide is I want to leave with the thought that, well, definitely financial and stealing cryptocurrency and compromising those are usually on fraudsters' mind or the motive for SIM swap. Social media account hijacking is also has been pretty common, especially with dignitaries. So all these, so pretty much if you want to think about how to be aware of what is the extent of damages that can be done, you can think about everything that you receive a multi-factor authentication text message on your device can be compromised. Bank account, social media account, your performance accounts, things that you use, Spotify, name it. This is another graph, shows a good picture of SIM swap fraud and how these victims were targeted. So majority of them, believe it or not, received a phone call. 73% of them received a phone call, and it was, so that's kind of a social engineering attack was involved to compromise the SIM swap, while there were 57% receiving an SMS message. The other 17 and 19% came through some sort of social media platform and also through email. That's one of those, the phishing things we talked about right before we got into this slide. So what is at risk? Top of the list, tens and millions of dollars, because as we discussed, most of these attacks are driven with financial intent. Then definitely the identity, followed with reputational damages. As you could see, there were quite a few dignitaries and high-profile victims to social media attacks that really questions the reputation of the company, especially for a scenario like Twitter CEO's Twitter account getting hacked, really questioned what kind of controls on security they can strengthen or work on. So a lot is at stake when it comes to protecting a company from these type of attacks. And then there are definitely other valuable commodities that can be compromised. Privacy gets compromised, as we talked about, resulting into all your bank accounts, social media accounts, and even your online accounts, for example, of your carrier provider, giving the fraudster ability to go through, your call history, your text history, and so on, and email and everything else. And these kind of information can then be definitely used, rather abused for further information, further exploitation, harassing, scamming friends and family, way beyond the initial attack. Some of these information can definitely be very, very sensitive and exploited in future rather at this point in time. So I really want to just make sure that we understand the gravity of the issue and the importance of talking about protecting our accounts against SIM swapping attacks. With that, so far, kind of feel like I've just scaring everybody with all the bad news and all the bad things that can happen. We do have some success on, and this is one case study I really want to just bring up to your attention. And believe it or not, this was way back in August 2018, right around the time we saw a lot of different SIM swap attacks picking up in our country. So one of the largest bank in Africa, Mozambique, they came out, they did identify this issue, and they were seeing more than 17 SIM swap attacks every month. If we think about the staggering number of mobile users we have in the country, this might seem like a low number. And I believe that was one of the reasons in this bank could solve the problem, because even though it was a small number, they dove right in and worked to find a solution. So they reached out to all the carriers in Africa for a solution, and then the phone companies offered a fix. So the carriers came together and set up a system to let the bank query the phone records for any recent SIM swaps associated with a bank account before they carried out a money transfer. So if there was a SIM swap that had occurred in the last 2 or 3 days, the transfer would be blocked immediately. And because the SIM swap victims could typically see them within minutes that their phone has been disabled, the window of time allowed them to report the crime before the fraudster could take advantage. And with this collaborative effort between the carrier and the bank, and really diving down into this issue to close that loop, they resulted into a zero SIM swap fraud in the bank overnight. So the lesson learned here is definitely there is a need, there is a solution, there is a hope, although it can get complex when we are talking about millions. We are talking about all the regulations that are involved, also making sure we are protecting customer at all cost and their data at all cost. There is a collaborative effort which can drive some of these solutions. So I really look at that use case as a pilot for something to learn from and apply if we continue to see the SIM swap, rather than trying to solve the problem individually. It is as much as a problem for the carriers as much as for everybody else. It is really a shared issue, a shared responsibility across the board, protecting each one of us eventually. So one question comes right back, oh, well, why aren't we doing this in America if it is so simple? Like I said, definitely there is a complexity. And then in US, we don't also make a real-time SIM swap data available for the kind of security checks that other countries' banks have implemented. Obviously, there are regulations involved, and it's a much bigger conversation than my level to eventually get there. But I do feel strongly that there is a solution in looking into the data and the analytics to identify these attacks before they happen, to block some of it in real time. And I'm sure it's happening. It's happening to some extent today to get us there eventually. I'll move on to the next slide, and I can maybe provide you with some ideas or thoughts on what can you do about it, or what can we do about it as an individual level to protect ourselves from these type of attacks. So first thing, very, very fundamental rule of thumb. Do not reply to calls, emails, or text messages that are requesting personal information. And personal information does not mean, oh, your social security number. Sometimes it could be as simple as somebody calling in, say, hey, happy birthday. And we could say, oh, thank you, or just go away. So that's just an example of how smart these social engineering attackers have become, and for us to be more careful about on how each response that we make can share that one bit of information about us with a fraudster. Limiting your personal information online. So, of course, the social media and the groups that we have, the posts that we like, that we share, with the level of intelligence that we have in our device today and the data shared across, I do say that often that privacy is sort of a myth, and being more and more careful about which bits and tidbits about ourselves we are posting online and where is quite critical. Setting up a PIN or password on your cellular account, very important. Many of us sometimes are not even aware that, oh, there is an additional PIN or associated with some of our cellular accounts, and that could become a one point of failure when it comes to these type of attacks. So making sure you check back on that and protecting your cellular account is very, very essential, because those become the target a lot of times with all these tidbits, other little pieces of information they already have about a customer's account, and kind of that one missing link, one little vulnerability can actually facilitate that. Or if you understand, I'm expecting that all of us who are participating in a security conference, having that defense in layer, it just allows you another layer of defense of having additional PIN, password, complexity, and so on. And consider using stronger authentication on accounts that are going to be associated with your sensitive or personal or financial information. It cannot hurt to have, a hashed password or a key log you use, where you actually have a different password for every account. Sounds very, very simple, but we have statistics showing people still using very weak password, same password everywhere, and things like that. And with that, I also recommend that please visit the stopsimcrime.org. As I was doing my research, I stumbled upon the page, and there is quite a good resource to learn about the tactics that criminals use to get victims to provide information, and what can you do about them. So, scammers are usually making the phishing attempts to get your personal information, which ultimately results into compromising a cellular, bank, credit, or other account. And if you are getting those requests, you can contact the company and use that. If, for example, if I see a text message that sounds strange, it's associated with, it looks like there is a logo with it, which looks like Bank of America account, and it's asking for, hey, click this link and log in. And it could simply be an ID farming attempt to get access to my account and so on. Make a call to the company. I mean, we do take down lots of websites every day for Verizon, which looks like Verizon, and we appreciate customers reaching out when they see it and like, wait a minute, that says Verizon, but it's a Verizon with an U and not an O. So as you see them make those calls, let the company know it is a mutual effort for all of us to protect each other. On the public pages online, avoid, full names or addresses or phone numbers on the public site. These pages are scanned constantly to build your profile, to gather more information. Check your provider's website constantly on update for anything that's coming up, for new methods of protection. And we have seen many SIM attacks recently that actually look like the multi-factor authentication may not be enough. So keep in mind that the text message verification may not stop a SIM card swap. So if you are concerned about SIM card swapping, I did mention earlier, use an authentication app or a security key. Highly recommended. Okay, what can you do if you are already scammed? Contact your cellular service provider to take back control of your phone number. Once you regain access, change your account passwords, change your credit card, bank, and financial accounts, because that's where fraudsters are usually looking into. Put them immediately, or just report the company and the institution and say, hey, I don't want any transaction to happen on my bank account for next 24 hours or 1 week or whatever time that you need to get that control back. If you think the scammer has already gotten your information, like Social Security, credit card, bank account, I also recommend you go to identitytheft.gov and see what specific step you can take. Coming to the next slide. So what are the carriers doing about it? Do the carriers care about their consumers or not? Or are they steps being taken? And although I speak about all the 4 carriers in next few slides, it is all public information. None of this is either Verizon or any other competition's proprietary information here. So just I just want to make sure that everybody on the panel is aware of that. So on the Verizon side, we have recently implemented a one-time code when the SIM card change or device is requested. So we allow the customer to receive a one-time PIN that they can validate to successfully do the swap. We also have a port notify method. So for example, if a customer looks like they are porting out their number, which is a very, very common request. We are porting our numbers from one carrier to a carrier all the time. Although we have seen a trend of unauthorized port outs, we alert customers in real time via SMS or email that, hey, a port is initiated. If you did not do it, you can take an action now. It happens in real time, and it can curb a lot of attacks in real time with a simple mechanism of notifying the customer. Verizon also offers the number transfer freeze, where a customer can opt for a port freeze, and that prevents their phone number from being ported out to another carrier. So if I know that I want to stay with Verizon for at least 6 months, I don't want anybody to be porting it out, and I'm the only person who should be doing that, I can simply go into my account and say, hey, freeze, put a port freeze on my number. And it is very, it's very simple as long as you are heightened authenticated to put account on freeze. And if there is it is a very, very useful mechanism to use. And I actually broke it down a little bit on how you can put that freeze on your account if you're a Verizon, and you can simply make your account a lot more secure from these type of attacks. On the other hand, AT&T adds an extra security to the account. So AT&T customer can go to the profile, sign in, and then go into the section of managing extra security and have a wireless passcode. So that's a step up authentication right there, and it allows you to have extra security. And they also have a section where you can report the suspicious activity where you can report an unauthorized SIM card swap and contact the information on the bill. It's also available on the bill. T-Mobile, their protection strategy is through PIN. They do an over-the-phone verification with customer care, which requires that you verify personal information and establish the identity. And if there is a customer care password on the account, information will be verified. So PIN and passcode, if the customer does not have one, they prompt their customers to log into T-Mobile. They also have a port validation method implemented, and there is a PIN which requires to be validated. It is similar to what Verizon has as well when you're for porting out. And without this security feature, a customer will not be able to change carrier and port out their numbers. So that's another layer of defense to protect an account. And the last one here, which is no port, it's similar to also what we just talked about on Verizon side for port freeze, where you can log in and opt in for no port, means your phone number cannot be ported out without a proper identification, additional identification in store. So they do offer this feature to a small subset of customers who have been a victim of fraud. So I do not have the details, but it seems like they do have a mechanism to identify accounts that has been a victim of fraud. It could be customer notifying themselves or their own intelligence to have an extra layer of protection for the customers. Sprint, they take a risk-based approach to SIM swaps, and different modes and channels have different requirements. Some of their modes, when I talk about modes and channels, I mean customers coming in through websites or apps or a store, and all these different ways they can be interacting. And as does the customer, so does the hacker. So the SIM swap request through the Sprint website requires the ESN number for any new device and undisclosed additional fraud control. I could not find this information on a public website, so I'll continue with how much I have available there. And in retail stores, SIM swap requires that they do an ID scan, except, of course, we have some states that has an exception of not allowing this practice. They also apply PIN for every account by default, and an account, actually, you cannot have an account with Sprint if you don't have a PIN associated with this. And they also have an instant notification mechanism to protect the accounts. They reach out to customer each time their PIN security question answer changes. Based on the customer preference, this notification can be sent via email and text message. And I can do that. I can definitely confirm that Verizon has pretty much the same mechanism there. So Verizon encourages that the customers put on their administrative locks on their accounts, and while Sprint requires that the mobile accounts have their PINs associated by default, AT&T goes out all the way and they create unique passwords for their accounts. Although it is not required, T-Mobile prompts the customers to set up the PIN to talk to customer reps and access some of the features of their online account. So in a nutshell, you can see there is definitely a lot of interest and responsibilities across the board for all carriers to continue working in the direction of protecting customers of all scale, all level. And yes, it is always a challenge to hit that right chord between the ease of access for that majority of customers who are doing the swap for a real scenario, and we want to have that port out pretty seamless and quick, while on the other hand, striking that balance of just enough validation, enough authentication to curb the small percentage of fraudster becomes a tricky one, and a key that we constantly work towards at the company level, at the industry level, and everybody else. And that brings us to the last slide of our presentation here. Credit to Krebs on security and also the FTC pages and many other government sites that I have leveraged to put together this presentation for all of us to have an overview of the SIM swap, how it happens, what can we do about it. And obviously, this is a work in progress, and eventually we'll get to a point where we are able to, there will be a perfect day where we will have no frauds in at least this area. But it is always a moving target, as you could imagine. So with that said, thank you all for listening through the presentation. We